For many people to believing in Jesus means stepping into the realm of the unknowable, doesn't it? You have the realm of science, you have the realm of facts and evidence and reality. And then you've got another realm, the realm of belief. Ways of seeing the world, which may be more or less helpful. They may be more or less truthful, but they don't really involve questions of truth or reality. So for many people today, believing in Jesus is the same, isn't it, effectively, as believing in anyone else, whether that's Muhammad or the Buddha or ourselves, or believing in someone else, someone that we trust or have confidence in. If it's true and if it works for you, then it can only be a good thing. But don't expect to think that one kind of belief is true and another isn't a valid belief, or that we could ever come to a view on that. It's just not that kind of question. That's how a lot of people think about belief, isn't it? But actually, that's not how belief in Jesus is presented in John's Gospel at all. And in fact, we saw that, didn't we? I've said in verse 12, verse 37, the opposite is the case. John appeals to us to believe in Jesus on the basis of signs and evidence as to who he is. In John's Gospel, John, who is one of Jesus' closest followers, presents to us a number of signs and evidence from which he wants us as the readers to draw the logical conclusions. He's quite upfront about that. If you go right to the end of his book, in chapter 20, verse 31, he says, Jesus did many other signs that I haven't written about in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. He's upfront with us exactly what he's doing in his book. He wants us to believe in Jesus. And he wants us to do that on the basis of evidence of signs. And he thinks that's a perfectly reasonable and logical thing for us to do. And so as we read through John's Gospel and think about it, as we see the wonderful things that Jesus does about how he heals someone who's been unwell for more than 30 years, how he feeds more than 5,000 people from a few loaves of bread and fish, how he gives sight to a man born blind, how he raises Lazarus from the dead, and how he himself is dead. John is expecting us to draw the obvious conclusion that Jesus isn't just one of a pantheon of gurus, or figures, or philosophers. That the evidence points us to the fact that he must be the Son of God himself. Just as in a court of law, we expect a jury or a judge to be able to listen to conflicting and opposing testimonies as to what is true and weigh up what is said. So we're being shown that actually we should be able to decide, looking at the evidence, that Jesus can be no one other than the Son of God himself. So why is it then that people don't believe in Jesus, having been presented with the evidence about him? Is it because there isn't enough evidence? Look again at 12:37. Not according to 12:37, it's not because there's not enough evidence about Jesus. Even after Jesus had performed so many signs in their presence, they still would not believe in him. The diagnosis that John gives, and God through John gives for unbelief, ultimately, at the heart of unbelief, is a fundamental denial of reality about Jesus. And that's the stark diagnosis, isn't it? It's very, very stark, very frank, and very full on. But actually, what John is saying effectively is, you think about other stories where, that story that I told at the front maybe is a bit funny, isn't it, about being in denial about the Woodwork project. But there's other times when being in denial of reality is very, very serious, isn't it? Think about the Royal Mail Horizon scandal with their computer system. You'll know the story of that, won't you? How many years did it take for it to become generally accepted that actually the problem with all that money going missing wasn't the postmasters or the postmistresses, but it was actually a problem with the computer system? But actually, along the way, until that became generally accepted, people were quite willing to bend the facts to fit their narrative. Because their narrative was, no, it can't possibly be the computer system. It must be the corrupt postmasters and postmistresses. And they stuck to that story, even though it meant people going to prison, losing their livelihoods, having their lives ruined. And actually, the stark and sobering message of this passage is that by nature, we all do that when it comes to Jesus. We may think, well, if there was just a bit more evidence, then I would believe in him. We might say, well, if Jesus would just do a miracle for me now, then I would believe in him. Or we say, okay, well, I've seen the signs about Jesus, but I know that he's a good teacher. But there's not enough evidence to say that he's the way, the truth, and the life, the only way to God, as he presents himself in John's Gospel. Or we say, well, we can't really ever know whether Jesus was who he says he was. As to human beings, we explain away the miracles of Jesus, don't we? His resurrection. We use science to explain we claim to use science to explain away any need for a creator in our world.